Yugoslavia are a favorable ground in order to implement the United States economic, political, and in particular military presence in Europe. Especially this last one is very important because after the fall of the Warsaw Pact, the U.S. military presence in Western Europe has lost any kind of pretext or justification. So it is not surprising that the United States has been active in establishing this sorry situation that is currently in effect in the majority of the Balkan countries. After the breakup of the Eastern Bloc, some kind of Cold War has continued in this context in order to prevent in any way the survival of a society which could serve as an example of a successful alternative to this current simple introduction of or imposition of the capitalist model to different problems. In any case, Yugoslavia was not to outlive the Warsaw Treaty because the Eastern European countries would have an uncomfortable example of independent development and an alternative to unquestioning acceptance of the values of the West, thus posing an obstacle to the New World Order as introduced or imposed by the United States as the only remaining superpower in the world, namely the transformation of the world to a corporation society under the leadership of the World Bank and the United States, where robbery would be the main motive.
It is a well-known thing that the U.S. Congress in March adopted a foreign operation law stopping all assistance to Yugoslavia except for democratic parties, and then neo-Nazis and fundamentalists were included among these democratic parties that were supposed to be assisted. Later on, Albanian terrorists too, and Albanian separatists all the way along. It is a well-known thing that this privatized MPRI, Military Resourcing Incorporated, played with the Croatian army and in the final stages of the Croatian offensive against the Krajina. This also confirms that American action in relation to the Yugoslav crisis had as its aim the maintaining of U.S. presence in Europe, including Kosovo and Macedonia, as well as the influence of the U.S. and NATO throughout Europe. Economic interest as an interest that stands above all others is one that I believe I need not refer to here and now. Such aspirations for domination in this area are the only explanation for some irrational actions at first glance taken by the United States. For example, influencing Ali Izetbegovic to withdraw his signature on the Cutillero plan. And also, what is less known is that the Van Soen and Owen-Stoltenberg plans were thwarted in some stages. It is obvious that it was not in the interest of the U.S. to have peace in the Balkans until the military presence of the U.S. and NATO were not ensured and conditions were not created to have a solution found under U.S. patronage. The U.S. insisted in Rambouillet on NATO military presence throughout Yugoslavia, and also this aggression, which had as its aim the occupation of Kosovo, the occupation of all of Yugoslavia, and ensuring the lasting presence of NATO throughout the area. The administration of William Clinton got involved in dangerous liaisons with Islamist fundamentalists, and they include the Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, the KLA terrorists in Kosovo, etc. So it is precisely those individuals and organizations that after the 11th of September have been considered the greatest threat to the United States and to the world in general. The price that has to be paid for this policy of the Clinton administration is an enormous one, and it has to be paid, unfortunately, by innocent citizens throughout the world, including American citizens, but others too, like Spaniards, etc. However, if the aspirations and objectives of Germany and the Vatican and the USA in the Yugoslav crisis were more or less evident, what is shocking is the behavior of the members of the other members of the European community, later on the European Union, especially under German influence, in spite of the declaration of the European community about Yugoslavia. And I quote, democratic Yugoslavia has the best prospect of fitting into a new Europe appropriately, and this was a quotation. After Slovenia and Croatia were recognized, and after an armed conflict broke out, the European Parliament in Strasbourg in 1991 adopted a resolution which did not support unilateral secession of these two Yugoslav republics. Other organs of the European community also supported the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia. Euro-American Forum, the OSCE Council of Ministers at their meeting in Berlin on the 19th of January 1991 adopted a declaration, and it inter alia expressed its support to the territorial integrity and unity of Yugoslavia in line with Helsinki. What was particularly underlined was maintaining the territorial integrity of the country. Had a similar stand prevailed at that point in time in the other, or actually it became obvious that this kind of stand was espoused on the other side of the Atlantic too. And Baker, after his visit to Yugoslavia, said that America supports a democratic and united Yugoslavia and that its future should be ensured. And he particularly pointed out that the USA would not recognize any one-sided acts of secession. Nevertheless, the European community, an organization that came into being as the result of a progressive process in Europe and in the world, opted finally, towards the end of 1991, to support a retrograde movement, that is to say, secession in Croatia and Slovenia and other secessionist republics. And on the 17th of September 1991, it adopted a declaration on the criteria for recognizing the newly established states in the Soviet Union and in Eastern Europe, and a declaration about Yugoslavia, calling upon all Yugoslav republics to submit requests by the 23rd of December, including proof that they have met criteria for independence. In this way, the European community not only trampled on what it said itself on the 26th of March 1991 in its own declarations, but also in another document, EC declaration in Rome, the 8th of November 1991, that request for independence put forth by those republics who so wish can only be looked at in a particular context. The role of Germany is clear in the change of this position of the 12. Nevertheless, it comes as a surprise, and it is self-defeating that 12 states permitted themselves to be coerced into doing something that they, in principle, did not agree with. And all this was done under the pressure of one of these 12 states only. Disregarding the strength of that state, I have to point out once again Friedrich Naumann and what he said at the beginning of the 20th century and the creation of small obedient statelets, and he called them satellites. Of course, when creating satellites, he did not think of the West. However, the diktat that had to do with the secession of the Yugoslav republics that was imposed upon the European community members, and the fact that they accepted that